So when 49 comes up as a gate of divorce, it can strike fear into many hearts. I know personally it's in my current Uranus opposition, and it was brought in by my husband's Uranus opposition too, where he just went through his personal Uranus opposition. And we ourselves came to grips with that. I'm happy to report we're on the other side of that. However, it's been a very tumultuous time, if I could put it that way. It's not to minimize what we've been going through. The only difference when it comes to understanding how it is that we are here to be ourselves is the fact that every single one of us has the capability to source inside, to find ourselves in realignment in order to see the differentiated self shine through these activations that are true. And if you look at the activations within the stream, you will find the places and spaces of specificity. Okay, so to remind you of how this works, if you have this channel, then you have a very narrow, fixed point of imprinting on one side, meeting up another planet, another aspect of the channel that is very narrowly fixed and specific. So if a gate can operate in around 1,080 different ways because of the number of points of imprinting, then that means whenever we have a channel, we have a locked inness and a limitation to that person that is authentic and real. If it's yours, to you. Then what we have too, in addition, is openness in all of those other points of imprinting within the gate where we do not have planets hanging out there. So if I wish we could do this somehow, if anybody knows how to do this, to create an animation, because right now we're looking at a flat piece of paper or digits on a screen or what have you, an image that is one-dimensional. We do not see the full ramifications of this multidimensionality that we are. So in truth, when transits come in, like I just explained with my husband and I both having this as something that we're learning about to go through in our cycle and our evolutionary journey of being a married couple together. If we could see the imprint, the dimensionality of what we are learning about, even if you have that channel, everyone has everything. You have more receptivity than you could absolutely comprehend or know. And so when you have receptivity, you think, oh, well, a planet comes in, that planet, let's say coming into 49, you don't have it. What planet is it? What line is it? What color, tone? I guess base. We don't use that for analysis work. It's too deep, not something that is practical to mess with. When we look at the 49th gate of revolution, this fear of nature and the unknowable, this is the potential again to both sacrifice and be sacrificed. When we think about this as bride and groom or divorce, my mind remembers, traditional marriage vows as far as love, honor, obey till death do us part, for better and for worse, for richer and for poorer, all that stuff. So it's grounded in the capability of understanding that everyone is subject to running away from pain or fear, or maybe getting frozen in fear. Many people are motivated by emotional pleasure, running towards pleasure. But if you either run towards or away from a place of inauthenticity, or we'll say the mental, what my mind calls reality, mental reality, oxymoron, truly. What you'll find is that you get caught up in the mind and its distortion and its machinations of thinking that you are in the real world when truly you're just living up in your head, let's say, divorced from the body and its realism and its capability, trusting in the nature of the form, that all forms are terminal, that everything comes to an end, that everyone dies. And in truth, death is just a doorway. It's an opening to a new beginning. And here with the 49th gate, we are talking about the mystical death that is truly on the path of awakening. Let's compare with the fear of death, or the fear of dying before one has achieved the recognition or realization of one's life work, their purpose fulfillment. 28th gate, gate of the game player, gate of the risk taker, and the individuality, intuition stream, of knowing. So many people live under that fear of living a purposeless life, a life devoid of meaning and purpose fulfillment. And so if we look over and compare and contrast that with this tribal fear of death, this is fear of nature and consequences, the death of the form. Think form over here, okay? Form. This is going to be important when we come back to the keynoting. The fear of being murdered, the fear of being slaughtered. Remember that the 49 is the gate of slaughter. If the 19 is the one that raises the animals, the 49 is the one that butchers the animals. This is where death happens physically, accordingly to someone imposing their will on another, whether it be a sheep to slaughter or whether it be atrociously another human being. So this fear of death turns out to be looking for purpose in order to come to grips with the fact that we are in terminal forms, and therein lies this fear of death, nature and the unknowable. Link those two, okay? The fear of death over with the 28, it's purpose, the purpose of this life. Now, to find a life of meaning and purpose, a life worth fighting for, to struggle for meaning. Fighting is, the fighter is the 38th gate. So when we look at the fear of nature and the unknowable, here, this death is involved, and it's about being killed. The death of one's marriage. Nothing like, I'm in my third one, nothing like the failure of a first marriage as a young 3 to, quote, shadow state mind, make you feel as if you're a failure. Oh, that was a terrible one. Second one wasn't as bad, relatively speaking. This one, the mind's drama says, I don't know what I would have done if it had come to an end. The fear that lightning might strike you, 49th gate. The fear of the wrath of the gods, the fear of the mud floods, if you've heard of any of those things. The great floods of the worlds, the cascading seas that wiped out humanity. We all have that memory intrinsically embedded within the cellular structure matrix of our inherited ancestral DNA. So this is not the catastrophizing of the mind. This is not an untrue thing. It's a real thing that can happen, that has happened, but is it here now? There is no amount of security that can save or shelter you from the fear of what may be. The 30th gate is the fear of what may or may not happen. So many times people try to build walls, either metaphysical, physical, spiritual, whatever it is, around themselves in order to protect themselves from such calamity, particularly if they have had trauma in their life. And so it is the trauma of the slaughter that we're dealing with here, whether it be human or animal, for ritual or for food. All of that is here. The 19 and the 49 have an incredible relationship. This is a transspecial connection channel, meaning in a human, we have the 49th gate. Mammals don't have that, but they do have the 19. And so when it comes to this bargain that leads us to give the animal a safe place to be raised and whatever it is that they need for their relatively good life, they might be quite sheltered and protected, but also raised in a humane or inhumane way. We don't know. But the fact that this is here where we are currently going through a tremendous physical mutation as human beings should not be lost on anyone, right? That 49th gate separating from the 19. And so in the same way, this 49th gate separating from the 19th, not only in our own human DNA, genetic codons, but also from our connection with mammals. There's a lot of joking in human design in the back ends, whispered wonderings. Are all the animals, are our pets going to eat our faces off after 2027? Joking. When it comes to this 49th gate, the way that we have contact with mammals, with animals, because of this potentiality where they don't have a solar plexus connective field, but we do, since they don't have the emotional system, the way that they will meet the emotions is through us. So most mammals are going to be reflective in nature, just like most humans when they sleep. This is the dream rave design. We revert to our mammalian ancestral heritage at night. And what we see is that nighttime in the dream rave realm, most of us, about 70% of us, instead of being solar creatures, our lunar nature is reflective. And this is similarly in the mammals, that most of them reflective. I have 5 animals in my house. One of them is generated, all the rest reflectors. So they learn about all of them. They learn about the emotions through us. The way they meet the emotional system is through us. When you're dealing with the 1949, again, the channel of synthesis, a design of being sensitive, this is the root of the stream of the need for touch, the stream of sensitivity. So a stream of need. This is our tribal, more base needs, our base principles, our base survival. Everyone needs food and shelter to survive. Would you agree? This is the nature of what this currently is. Food resources, a need for food resources. Animal husbandry is where this, domesticating mammals and also leading to controlling them. Because remember, all ego gates are about control on whatever level relative to that particular gate activation. So we've had a long history with mammals, with controlling them, genetically altering them, raising them in whatever way, shape, or form we could in order to find our food security and ensure that the support is there for us to get what we need from the mammal. And this is why meat eating has traditionally been in a sacrificial and sacred manner where there's always been some kind of prayer over the mammal and thanking the mammal for the blessings of being able to ingest this meat in order to be able to find our support. Remember, 37 is the mouth, 40 is the stomach. For our form, support for our form. Remember form here. So over the years, if we go 20, 30,000 years ago, those kinds of ancient mammals, just like we who have evolved much from Neanderthal to Cro-Magnon to Homo sapien to now Homo sapien intransitus, where we are very different from our ancestral heritage, the same thing has happened with our mammals. Same thing, that there has been specific kinds of breeds created. Like, as an example, remember way back in the day, I don't know if you've ever looked into the heritage of the modern dog, wolves being domesticated and bred into what we now have as a plethora of different kinds of dogs, pets, not for eating, not for slaughtering, not for hunting. These are our cherished beloveds. And that support of that bargain, of that connection is now on the out. So what's to come? Who knows? Your guess is as good as mine. We'll find out soon. Nothing to do but wait and see. So as an example, here's the classic example. 49 says, it'll make a deal with the 19. I will look after your needs and you obey me, okay? 19 flirts traditionally with the 49 to get its needs met, and the 49 deigns to or agrees to that tribal unity, that bargain. However, if we look at the statistics, I don't know what they are, but generally it's constantly being shared that most domestic violence happens between husband and wife for whatever reason. But here is one of the reasons, because it's genetically in our code to kill. Okay, this is where we kill. This is the most bloodthirsty of places, that 49. Think about the gate of revolution. Have you ever met a peaceful revolution, or were there sometimes some real sacrifices being made? If you need something, says the 49, I'll give it to you. I'll give you what you need, but you better obey me. And if you don't, there is going to be consequences. That's why Ross says the 49 is the fear of consequences, not just nature and something lightning striking and killing you, but also too, other people in your life killing you, threatening you, beating you, murdering you, slaughtering you. This is, I know, one of the things that is very hard to look at. And yet some of us, it is part of either maybe it's your life's work or transits. Again, transits moving us towards purpose. If I can pass on nothing else about going through cycles of experience, the large life cycles, Saturn, Uranus, and as I move into my Chiron, I can feel it. Aspects of it have come in already, and then retrograde. What I can tell you experientially is that the thing that really helped me, besides the, you are your own authority and honoring oneself as the sovereign truth within, can be capable of handling anything that life throws at it, using tribal language there. The thing that kept repeating that was so helpful to me is to know that everything is movement towards purpose, that some things are fated, and that you cannot control what has been slated, yes? When it comes to the evolutionary cycles of experience that we all have to move through. No matter what it is that you're dealing with, especially when you can find it in transit, long-term, larger planet transit, movement towards purpose. Just think movement towards purpose, part of the movement towards purpose. And every single time that you link something in your mind of what's happening because of your transits, and you can source inside and know that, hey, you really are okay, that this too shall pass, that here in the 49, what it's there for in this goal of worship in order to avoid the fear of nature is the avoidance of being killed or murdered or slaughtered and all of that stuff. So the gate of the butcher. I'm going to read this to you from Ra. In the 49 is a memory of what it was to be under threat of being killed, always under threat of being killed. You cannot imagine how many incarnations, how many generations of human beings were constantly on the lookout for something that was going to eat them, kill them. Killing is the trip, the gate of revolution. You know of any nice revolutions, truly nice? There are no nice revolutions. There's usually an awful lot of killing that takes place. That is what's sitting here in this 49th gate. This is the gate of the butcher, the gate of Abraham ready to sacrifice his son. This is Jesus on the cross being killed so that others can benefit, and on and on. Here lies the killing ground. Everything that we understand about killing, the world of violence that we see in our time, all of that is in the 49th gate. And if we can link it to the remembrance of what Ra would oft say, or either I'm hearing it a lot, is that 49th gate, because it's on the decline, we have the rise, the last dying gasp of this energy. And so we see it all around us. We see the wars, we see the atrocities. One of the questions that was asked of Jovian Archive on the Instagram live stream was, why are human beings still killing each other? Why? That, the 49th gate, that is why. This is the bloodiest place in the body graph. Okay, you would think the 26th gate, yeah, killer instinct. Those people, they have a nose for business. You know, the war room as far as the stream of capitalism. But over here, it's quite bloody too. It's quite messy. It's, yeah. My mind is saying senseless killing. Yeah, there is no making sense of some of this killing. Of course, we can rationalize killing the animal because of being able to imbibe them, ingest them in order to support our form. The dilemma of the 49th gate is that it's fundamentally based on principles, our baser, lower principles, you could call it, because remember, higher principles is up there in the 1020. So all revolution, regardless of motive, need to be substantiated or supported by the principles, whether they are correct or not. Everything about the 49th gate is about principles. So as an example, I remember consulting with a lawyer recently, and I heard come out of my mouth principles. It's about the principle of it. And he said, I will carry a refrigerator up and down stairs for you. I will fight for you. But just know that principles are very expensive in litigation. Something to that effect. The 49th gate, besides the death, the fear of consequences, if we think about divorce, here's another keynote that you can recognize as far as what the 49th is here for. Firing. If the 21, is responsible for hiring and giving other people work, the 49 is the one that cuts them out because they are not obeying the principles to which the company is upholding. So just know that this is a very heavy, heavy place, and it's under mutation. Example, if we can think about the current onslaught of the economic crises and the contraction of the economy and the intolerance that employees have currently to having to work for someone else who holds them in a chokehold of obedience and superslavance to the powers that be, governments or industries or LLCs, corporations. You lose your job or you get fired if you are in demand of that sustenance in order to sustain your family. It is a life disruptor. It's a life-shaking, horrifying event. And once you've gone through that, where you were depending on that, if there is an alternative route where you never have to be threatened by someone or harassed by someone in order to keep your job, to keep quiet, or to obey and not to do the right thing, and then finally you are let go or you quit or whatever the case may be, it's over, Would you ever want to put yourself in that position again? You may, if it's right for you. However, most people, once they've been burned like that, burned at the stake, burned for heresy, whatever the case may be, most people will not put themselves in such situation again. And this is the end of that era where you are super slaving to the government. It's time for a new kind of awakening, the empowerment of the sovereign individual who can do their own thing in their own time, in their own way. We call that entrepreneurialism. Yeah, we call that the modern day. In 2050, by the time that comes around, they're predicting 90% of our world will be entrepreneurial. I mean, can you imagine? It's the rise of the gig economy or creator economy or whatever you want to call it. It's here, it's happening. And that's part of the new era. And so this emotional center, remember, because it's going through its metamorphosis, my mind is saying, and maturation as well, it's going through its mutation. What's happening is that there's a lot of volatility here. That doesn't excuse the volatile over or abreactions, but it's just explaining what's going on with people, that there's a lot of heaviness and pressure and fear. Fear of, remember, if we look at the other side, the mirror of this is the stream of capitalism. And that is, the fear of one's genetic lineage dying out. That's an ancient mammalian fear. Yeah, on the other side, part of the mammal stream over there. On this side, what about the death of an industry? Thanks to the rise of AI, I don't know about you, but this is the first time I've said it publicly. What I'm seeing is that my particular way of analysis work, what I was doing with presentations and, really deep, profound materials to give to my clients, no longer working. Don't have very many sales of that anymore. Spent all these years creating presentations in order to give really detailed and beautiful analysis work, and it's not being demanded for anymore. Why? Because we have such cheaper options now. There's software now. Very different, very different. So I recently, just this morning, reached out to Rose. Those of you who know Rose on my team, she's one of my longest projectors. With me and working for me, with me on the team. And I've invited her to help me co-create presentations of this sort, because it's not currently on the analyses quite yet, as far as AI is concerned or, software is concerned. So my stance on being able to remain relevant has always been to follow the energy. What is it that people are interested in? What is it that they're valuing? And what I'm seeing on my YouTube channel, you might have noticed I've been putting a lot more stuff up there, is that the mystical stuff, definitely interesting to people. The deeper layers of things, because they're thirsting for the information that has been traditionally locked away and not made okay. It's like, oh, mystical way, what is that? But now this is the last chance for inner truth as well, as far as our current era. The key is shifting. 2027 material on my channel has the most views. So if that is something that you're really planning on getting into when you're ready to do that, being able to help with the future coming of the rave, just to educate, to let people know that it's going to be okay if they give birth to one of these. So this 49th gate is incredibly touchy. Ross says touchy as hell when it comes to a savage revolutionary that eliminates everyone. Eliminate. Who are you going to eliminate? The competition. The potential for competition down the line. That's fear-based reality. That's not in alignment with the authentic nature of what it is to be a nine-centered human being, which knows and trusts that this show, this Maia, this dance, is about fractals, reality of the fractal connection. And that if it's right for you, to connect up with someone, if it's on the fractal line. My mind, back in the day when it was quite violent, used to say, you can't beat them away with a stick, they'll come back. Now, that was a very distorted view, very distorted back in the day, many years ago, decade ago. The madness of killing off most of your bloodline, that's what the 49 will do. Cut everybody out. Cut your family out, cut your friends out, distant family, cousins, just don't reach out because of the fear of consequences, nature. Ultimately, the death of the form, your form, their form. The mystical death here is a potential reality, though. And what is that mystical death? Not the actual physical death. Obviously, when the physical death happens, now we're done, right? We, as in this form principle, and we move on. But here, in the mystical death of awakening, it's the death of the old egoic nature, the consequences and the fear mongering and anything that has to do with hurt them before they hurt you or get them out before they can threaten you. Get rid of that. And you know, when you've been building these walls up over your whole life, knowingly or unknowingly, due to trauma or whatever it is, this life or past lives, once you rip down those walls, however it is that you manage to do so, life circumstances or your own recognitions, realizations, it's like being exposed, a raw wound, a raw nerve. This represents one of the most ancient traditions that exist in the mystical way of awakening. That mystical death is the death of the ego I. Okay, the killing of the mundane self, we could say. It is a transformational phenomenon. So there it is. Remember how we have mirror gates in the body graph, right? You have mirror channels in the body graph. So if the 5432 is the channel of transformation, a design of being driven. Over here, now we have this transformational phenomenon of the death of the ego I. So if you go into rave psychology, you'll hear about threat. That is the ego. How difficult it is to shatter the passenger consciousness in order to awaken it. If it's in your transpersonal karma, personal destiny, fixed fate, if it's in your trajectory to have this egoic death, it is very difficult to affect that change before the being is ready. And I would advise not to try and force it to happen, nor make it happen. Death of the ego I is quite messy. It can be quite revealing and changing. And it's like, you know, think of death and rebirth. It's a drastic and fantastic, this killing machine that the mystical way brings us, this transformative, the mundane obsession of the mind. Yeah, the mundane obsession with having more, with being more, with doing more in the outside world, which is the illusion and leads to the confusion. If we could go but inside, this 49th gate teaches smash and destroy the mundane I, the mundane self. So sacrifice is bloody. Yeah, you give up the death of the ego, you're going to have to learn what is truth within you instead of relying on that thing that was not trustworthy inside of you, thinking about 65% of the population who are undefined in the ego and awakening to the truth of their uniqueness and their value without having to prove anything to anyone, including themselves. If we take a look at where this stream is leading, the gate 25 is the gate of blood. Yeah, when we think about tribe, we think blood is thicker than water. And yet, when we leap, we take the path less traveled and we leap out of the tribe into the void. We look to the nature of the higher self and we see that the 25 is the gate of the blood. So when we're dealing with the 29, Ra says that you are dealing with religion, okay? You cannot separate religion from bloodletting, and it doesn't matter what the religion is. Bloodletting is always there. Sacrifice, it's there in the rituals and the wars and the metaphors. Just look around at the way that rituals and communal bonding happens in religion. This mystical stream is pulling us out of the lower sacrifice and into the higher nature of being, which is linked to the blood. Blood moves throughout the entire body. We have to have our blood. Blood is what moves this heart, this beating of the heart. And we think that we're civilized. Yeah. Communication has a more civilizing effect. You'll see that in the gates, in the throat quarter, second quarter, civilization, purpose fulfilled through form. However, because communication is quite crude verbally, because people don't say what they mean, or they say what they think they mean, and it doesn't mean the same thing to the other person. And so then we have missed communication rather than auric communion. There is nothing like auric communion. It doesn't have to do with the words that you use when you're truly communing. It's the energy that's behind it. So the blood and killing is still to this day in the mystical stream of awakening. In 100 years from now, when this stream no longer has the pressure, when the 49 has retreated into the emotional system and we have a fully mutated solar plexus and we don't have killing anymore, we don't have the drive for it. We don't have the pressure for it. We don't have the need for it. Can you imagine? Why do humans still kill other humans or kill themselves? Really? Sacrifice. This is the gate. It's going away. And isn't that wonderful to know? That there is no need for overcoming one's baser nature and principles in order to find the higher truth, because one will be empowered as oneself. No need for awakening. There are two kinds of priesthoods in the mystical way of awakening. This priesthood that is, remember, the gate of the priest, archetypally is the 25th gate. We're talking about monotheism up there, okay? It's all one God. Yes? Thou art God. God lies within. The higher self, the temple, which is the house of the spirit, the temple, 46th gate, the body, which is the life, the embodiment. Okay, monotheism, thou art God. Down here, God outside of you, or the 49th gate. This is polytheism. There's the God of this, and there's the God of that, and there's the God of nature, and there's the God of sacrifice and water and wind and Pele, the god of fire in Hawaii. I mean, there's all kinds of gods, whatever primitive, spiritual, baser leaders that might stand there and say that they speak for God. This is, however you want to dress it up. Down here, this is not one God. This is my God's better than your God down here in the tribe. Yeah, this is the monotheism of the priesthood compared to the polytheism of the nature of tribes. Such different things. And you would think, well, this is the only communal spiritual channel, this synthesis, a design of being sensitive. What kind of spirit is it? It's religious, it's dogma, it's love, honor, and obey, and do everything in the same way, or we'll sacrifice you. Cannibalism, I imagine, back in the day, came from here. Monotheism, the priesthood, the 25th gate, that is very, very different. A progression from the limitation of God for this, God for that, let's sacrifice to this person at this time of year and that person, God, outside of you. That time of year in order to get the favor, gain the favor of the worship of the gods, in order to not be killed by nature, in order to not be sacrificed at the altar. Monotheism is something that polytheism is not they're not capable of comprehending quite yet. Not saying everyone is going to be locked into polytheism. As you can see, many people are into that, spiritual nature of God within and without. But sometimes 49 still just can't figure it out. The 25th gate, according to Ra, enjoys the fact that it can interpret the unknowable because they can never be wrong, and that's an enormous advantage. It's not the 49th gate. Those people, through polytheism, they're caught up in the demands and the sacrifices and the bloodletting and the murder and the distortions of the emotions that they're currently swimming in the sea of. So the 49th gate, revolution, nature, and unknowable. This is the killer in all of us. Where do people kill other people? 49th gate. If you want to have a mystical reading, your killer is there, Ross says. It's always there, this fear of nature, this fear of the unknowable. And this is where the transcendence is. Ultimately, the elimination of fear, but it's impossible to eliminate fear completely from the emotional system. There's always this lurking monster in the background that can take it all away from you in a moment, like being fired, like losing your family to divorce. So this is not a pleasant gate to deal with. It's not the pressure and the yearning for God. Remember, when you look at harmonics, they are very different from each other, meeting in the middle or not. We're looking for clarity here, and we cannot find it in this human form currently because of the frequency of the motor dominating the emotional system. It will always go up and down, ratcheting up or down in this particular wave pattern frequency. Clarity, when one comes to clarity, it's never, ever, ever going to be 100%. It can't, because the wave is always moving. And there's this lurking monster in the background of fear that it can all be taken away from you at any moment. Fear that somebody's going to come walking through the door and smash your spacious little cave or sacred little cave or whatever it is that you've built up your nest egg for yourself. And it's just gone with your life. Through the suffering and the strife, coming to the space that lies within the form principle that is eternal. And yet, most people can't get there because they don't know it's there. They've never encountered their higher self or felt the deep peace of surrendering to that ocean of tranquility inside. And so when they're locked and limited into this fear, it's no wonder they start revolution. It's no wonder that they lash out in confusion. This is, quote, I'm afraid, and because I'm afraid, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to control everything. I'm going to control it all. I'm going to establish a form that everybody's going to follow, and that's what's going to protect us. And you'll see as we go through the line qualities to see what someone might be subject to as part of the nature in you. Because remember, when we're looking at this, you look at the personality, sun, earth on either side in order to see what the mind aligns to, as well as the form being dominated by that form's way in an effort to save the day, says the mind. We find the form principle ruling when it comes to our truth, our inherent truth, this body, this vehicle, this one precious life that you can access through deconditioning and aligning to what is unique to you. Follow your strategy, honor your authority. So this is the thing that we're going to analyze for our clients. 49th gate, one more thing, in order to help us understand where these things are coming from. Anybody ever been blackmailed before? Okay, that's where it came from, the 49th gate. Gaining support by exercising power. So if you want power, being a fluffy, warm-hearted, kind and unassuming, and always bending over backwards and people-pleasing, are you going to get power from that? No, necessarily the way that I expressed it, right? Revolution, Ra says, is very interesting stuff. It's about gaining support. And the way that you gain support is not by being charismatic, wonderful, touchy, feely, sweetie, because it doesn't work. You exercise power. People want to follow powerful people. Yeah, we don't want to follow shrinking violets. We want power. We want strength. Yeah, if you think about strength, think about a first line. Strength, vacillating between strength and weakness. Yeah, first line. We're going to get to that soon here. Ross says the power you have in life is life and death. Is life and death, whether you will eat or not, whether you will have shelter or not, whether you will be allowed to sit at the community table and reap the benefits of the communal tribal family or not, whether you will be educated or not, whether you'll be supported in any way or not, it goes through this gate. Gatekeepers. Gatekeepers, the 49s, love, honor, and obey through this way of marriage and divorce. In order to get the benefit of all of those wonderful gifts that marriage or union, we could say, with a company, because if you're working for another, you're temporarily yoking oneself to their reality, as in, are you riding on the coattails of them succeeding? Or are you going to get dragged down as they're failing? So no choice in that. It is what it is. No blame in that, no shame in that, no guilt, fault, regret in that. This is not about telling people they are good or bad or right or wrong. It simply is what it is. And when we talk about the why inside, this is what we can shine a light on for our clients. This 49th gate, when we look at it in terms of sexuality, that marriage and divorce, this need for touch, it's about cuddling here. It's not about the sex act itself. It's about hugs. It's about touch. A touch on the shoulder speaks volumes. A look, a glance, a touch, part of the romance of what it is to be tribal, holding hands, you know. This 49, how unstable it is right now because of the mutation. It's emotional. It's part of the frequency shift, yeah, histidine, that codon, linking the 49 to the 55. This is part of the nature of what's going on in all of us, being deeply tormented by the revolution. If it's something that you're amplifying and potentially distorting, remember the way that mostly that Ra is teaching about this is the receptivity, because when you have it in your design, in your natal design, you have a specificity that works correctly and perfectly for your purpose and what you came here for, if you are aligned to truth, your inherent sovereign nature of your truth. So, because the 49s carry the power to fire, to divorce, to reject, remember it's fear of rejection and nature and principles, the lower base principles. In most cases, 49s are the ones who are going to torment the other because they carry that power. Now, what if you're open, you're amplifying it, and you're drunk on power, and power is your distortion? Oh, I can remember power being my distortion back in the day. And it's not a pretty picture. It's quite violent as a way of living and being. So remember, it's a receptor. Here we have receptivity. The 49 receptor. Yeah, this is a receptor. What is a conditioning receptor but a hanging gate in an undefined center? That's a receptor. Okay. Now, if it's not hanging, it's receptive. That gate, you have it. You have a 49th gate, whether you have a planet there or not. The planet not being there, it is receptive. So when we talk about this fact, all human beings have the 49th gate. Through genetic continuity, everybody has the 49th gate, like you have every other gate. The only difference is that you have receptors in more places than you do your differentiated activations. Why? because there's only 26 in a human design body graph. 26, 13 conscious, 13 unconscious. Yeah, amplify, so much else in the body graph if 64 of those gates operate in a potential of 180 different ways. Now do you see the magnificence of the beauty and the wonderment of what it is to be you swimming in this neutrino ocean? Because you have 49th gate receptors. They're there. And there's a part of you that is always at some level prepared to kill. Isn't it an odd thing when we think we're so civilized that we're prepared to defend and kill? A heinous, atrocious act, my mind is saying. And yet, we can be conditioned to that. Altering the form. This is the thing to remember about the 49th gate of revolution. When it comes to the mystical way of awakening, alter the form. Alter your form. Your form, if you do as we say so, will bow to the north, will do this or that, whatever it is that this particular group of tribal conglomerates identify with as part of the nature of their rituals, their tribal rituals that unify them under whatever God it is, this God, that they bow down to. Okay, so this is the thing that you want to remember when it comes to the mystical way of awakening, is that we are going to have different ways that we alter the form. Revolution is about altering your form. This is what Ra gave to us as the keynote to remember. Okay, so that you do this, whatever it is. So they're going to threaten you with consequences in order to ensure that you do as you're told. If you don't obey, then we will fire you. If you don't obey, then we will divorce you. If you don't obey, then we will ostracize you. And obey, relative to the tribe, whatever things that are there in order to prevent the dissolution of such tribe, because it's fear of being murdered. So if we think about it archetypally to the nature of not just an individual, but a tribe, what happens if people don't obey the tribe? The tribe might die out. That's its fear. They might be killed by the conquerors if we don't stand together. This together we are stronger business. Yeah, united under one unified front. This is tribal after all, it's not individual. So the consequences that happen, besides divorce and the suffering of being eliminated from the tribe, we're not going to feed you anymore. We're not going to support you. We're not going to do anything for you, certainly, because you've threatened our way of life. You're going to be helpless. You're going to be vulnerable. We're not going to protect you anymore. And on and on and on is the way that they control and enslave you. So if you think back to Rafe cartography, remember how we were talking about from the 7-centered to the 9 in the past, in the 7-centered reality for 90,000 years as we developed self-reflected consciousness, the way that rulers, manifestors back in the day would enslave humanity is they would indoctrinate them, hypnotize them, if you will, with their rules and laws and how it is or should be under their care or their rule. Yeah, the dominance and submission game. You can't control individuals in human beings, but you can control the minds of the sheep. And that's what this is talking about. And so if you are able to wake up to align, let's say you're able to buck the trend of the communal enslavement, you're going to have to break down some walls relative to your ego eye. identifying with this tribe. People like us do things like this. Let it go so that your mind isn't running the show. But still, it is a revolution to change the form. Following your strategy and your authority, you change the form, you change your life. So these principles, the way that the form can be altered, simply the awareness, the way that awareness carries this energy, and it's operating in alignment. If you're following your strategy and authority, remember, everything works perfectly if you're aligned. The process itself is not incorrect. When we are in correctness or attunement, alignment, that we find these things operating perfectly. And maybe there is a revolution, maybe there is a divorce, and it can be okay. It's not a failure.